Given that I am a millennial and the central premise of Babylon Rocker is that of a ragtag group of misfits trying to make it out on the fringe of human space, it should come as no surprise to anyone that one of the inspirations for this comic was Firefly. A space western so literal that, barring a few exceptions, most everybody dresses in some ways reminiscent of the late 19th century, and the soundtrack is comprised mostly of fiddles and guitars. However, the part about the ragtag crew of misfits is not the influence that Firefly had on Babylon Rocker. After all, Firefly was not by any means the first to do this premise. Rather, Firefly's influence on Babylon Rocker was in terms of two specific characters: Nasina, the Babylon Rocker's captain and former revolutionary, and Cogitus, the Aquinian priest. If you were to ask me who's my favorite Firefly character, it would be a tie between Alan Tudyk's Wash, the eccentric pilot of the Serenity, and Shepard Book, played by the late Ron Glass, a friendly preacher with a mysterious past that we never find out about because Firefly was cancelled. Babylon Rocker is a vision of the somewhat distant future. Full disclosure, I myself am an agnostic. However, of late I've been increasingly skeptical of the idea that in the future we're all going to be enlightened space atheists a la Star Trek. Even if the religions of today die off in the future, others will simply arise to take their place. Ron Glass portrayed Shepard Book as this warm, almost fatherly presence among a crew of essentially outlaws, albeit with the occasional heart of gold among them, which almost immediately endeared him to me as a character. When I originally conceived of the characters of the main crew, I'd always intended Honoris to be the point of view character. As a clone barely 2 years out of his tank, he would have the most inexperience and thus be the vehicle through which the reader could experience the world of Babylon Rocker. I then thought that this was a character that could use a mentor figure, and so I created Cogitus, and specifically as a priest, as my tribute both to Book and to Mr. Glass. As for Nasina, the leader of this little ragtag crew, the inspiration was obviously Nathan Fillion's Mal Reynolds. In the setting of Firefly, Mal and his first mate, Zoe, participated in a war between the Outer Worlds, who wished to remain independent, and an alliance of inner worlds that wanted to unify humanity. It was a war that the Independents ultimately lost, and both Mal and Zoe were present at that final crushing defeat, the Battle of Serenity Valley. Unable or unwilling to accept this defeat, Mal and Zoe ultimately opted to be outlaws, thinking it preferable to work as criminals than be citizens of a government that they oppose. The fact that their ship is named the Serenity, as well as several great character moments courtesy of Nathan Fillion, show that Mal has never really moved on from that final defeat. That Serenity Valley haunts him to this day. And it was this sense of underlying sadness to the character that helped inspire the creation of Nasina. But instead of simply copy-pasting Mal's backstory, I decided that Nasina's would be an inversion of Mal's. What if the Independents had won the war, but then turned out to be just as bad as the Alliance? Just because you're the rebels doesn't automatically mean you're the good guys. History shows that most of the revolutions that have occurred didn't actually make things better after the revolutionaries won. They either led to corrupt oligarchies or incredibly horrific authoritarian regimes. Something that I think most of my fellow Americans in particular don't always appreciate, mostly because our revolution was one of the few exceptions to that rule. Nasina firmly believed in the cause of the revolution, of overthrowing the imperialistic Sol hegemon and restoring democracy. But when the revolution won, it turned out to be a lot darker and uglier than she'd suspected. And 2 years later, that knowledge and that revelation still haunt her, and makes her question what she fought for and whether or not it was worth it. As if keeping her crew alive and flying isn't hard enough. Part of the reason that the Babylon Rocker came to the fringe was so that Nasina could escape the past, leave it behind. But unfortunately, as the story of Babylon Rocker will hopefully tell, the past is not so easily ignored. Thank you for watching. If you like what you see, please support the Kickstarter and help make this a reality. Thank you.